Before we begin, I would like to ask you something simple. Think about the last decision you made today. Maybe you choose what to eat for breakfast. Maybe you decided to listen to this audiobook. Maybe you picked up your phone or put it down or said something kind of someone without really thinking about it. Now here's the question. Why did you do it? Was it logic? Was it a feeling? Was it habit? Was it something you can't quite explain? Most of us go through our days making hundreds of small choices. We trust our thoughts, we follow our instincts, we believe things about the world, about other people, about ourselves. But have you ever stopped to wonder where all of that comes from? How do we actually think? Why do we believe what we believe? What really guides our action? Is it reason or something else entirely? These are not just questions for philosophers in university libraries. These are questions about you, about me, about what it means to be human. And nearly 300 years ago, a young Scottish thinker sat down to write a book that would explore these questions more deeply than almost anyone had before. His name was David Hume, and the book you are about to hear is called The Treatise of Human Nature. Now, I want to be honest with you from the start. This is not a light book, it's not a quick read. It was written in the 1730s, and the language can feel old fashioned at times. But here's the good news, the ideas inside the book are not complicated because they are meant to confuse you. They are rich because they are trying to describe something incredibly complex, the human mind itself. Hume's goal was simple, even if his task was not. He wanted to understand how we think, how we feel, how we form beliefs, how we make decisions, and most importantly, how all of these things connect to each other. He wasn't interested in abstract theories that floated above everyday life. He wanted to look closely at real human experience. What happens when you see something? What happens when you remember it later? Why do you trust some ideas and doubt others? Why do your emotions sometimes overpower your logic? These are the kind of questions Hume asked, and the answer he found changed the philosophy forever. So, who was David Hume? He was born in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1711. He came from a good family, but he wasn't wealthy. He studied law for a while, but his heart wasn't in it. What he really wanted to do was think. He wanted to understand the world, not through religion or tradition or blind authority, but through careful observation, through looking at how people actually behave, through paying attention to what really happens inside our minds. In many ways, Hume wanted to study human beings the same way scientists were beginning to study nature. Think about what was happening at that time. Isaac Newton had recently transformed our understanding of physics. Scientists were learning to observe those, to experiment, to build knowledge based on evidence rather than assumption. Hume looked at all of this and asked a bold question. What if we could do the same thing for the human mind? What if instead of guessing about how we think, we actually studied it? What if we paid close attention to our own experience, our sensation, our memories, our feelings, and built a picture of the mind from the ground up? That's what the treatise is. It's Hume's attempt to be a scientist of the soul, not in a mystical way, not in a religious way, but in a careful, curious, honest way. He wanted to understand us as we really are. Now, as you listen to this book, you will come across some ideas that might seem unfamiliar at first, but I promise you, they are not as difficult as they might sound. Let me walk you through a few of the most important ones in plain words, impressions and ideas. First, Hume talks a lot about something he calls impressions and ideas. Here's what he means. An impression is anything you experience directly. Right now, as you listen to this, you might hear the sound of my voice. Impression. Feel the warmth of the sun on your skin or the weight of something in your hand. Those are impressions too. Impressions are vivid. They are immediate. They are happening right now. Idea, on the other hand, is what remains after the impression fades. It's the memory, the echo, the thought you have later about what you experienced. So when you remember, what chocolate tastes like, even so, you are not eating any right now. That's an idea. It comes from an earlier impression. You believed that all of our thoughts, no matter how complex, ultimately trace back to impressions. Even our most abstract ideas are built from simple experiences. This might sound basic, but it's actually a powerful claim. It means our minds don't just invent things out of nothing. We build our understanding of the world from what we have actually lived through habits and associations. Next, Hume talks about habits, not habits like brushing your teeth, though those matter too, but mental habits, patterns in how we think. You noticed that our minds don't jump randomly from one thought to another. There's a kind of order to it. When you think of fire, you might naturally think of heat. When you see a face, you might remember a name. When you hear a song, you might feel a certain emotion. Why? Because our minds connect ideas that often appear together. This is what Jung calls association. We associate things that are similar. We associate things that happen at the same time or in the same place. And we associate causes with effects. These associations become habits, and habits shape how we understand the world. We don't consciously decide to connect fire with hate. Our mind just does it because it's done it so many times before. Belief. This leads us to another big idea, belief. What does it mean to believe something? Hume had a fascinating answer. He said that belief isn't just about having an idea in your head, it's about how strongly that idea feels, how vivid it is, how alive. When you believe something, the idea feels solid, real, present. When you doubt something, the idea feels faint, distant, uncertain. So, belief for you is not purely logical, it's partly emotional. It's about the force and liveliness of an idea in your mind. This might surprise you. We like to think that our beliefs are based on pure reason, but Hume gently suggests that feelings play a bigger role than we realize. And this brings us to one of the most famous and controversial ideas in the entire treatise. Hume argues that reason on its own does not control our actions. Let me say that again because it's important. Reason alone does not move us to act. Now, this might sound strange. We often talk about being reasonable or making rational decisions. We praise logic, we trust thinking. But Hume invites us to look more closely. Think about it this way. Reason can tell you that if you touch a hot stove, you will burn your hand. It can give you information. It can show you consequences. But reason by itself doesn't make you care about getting burned. What make you pull your hand out? It's a feeling, a desire to avoid pain, a motivation that comes from somewhere deeper than logic. The Hume put it this way, and I will perhaps gently here. He said that reason is and ought only to be the servant of the passions. In other words, our emotions set the direction. Our feelings tell us what we want, and reason help us figure out how to get there. This was a shocking thing to say in Hume's time. For centuries, philosophers had placed the reason at the very top, the king of the mind, the ruler of the self. But Hume looked honestly at human experience and said, that's not how it actually works. We are not cold calculating machines. We are feeling creatures. We are moved by love, by fear, by hope, by curiosity. And reasons are those passions. It doesn't command them. Now you might be wondering, why was this so bold? Remember, Hume was writing in a world where religion and tradition still had tremendous power. People believed that the mind had access to internal truths. That reason could lead us to God, that we could know things with absolute certainty. Hume challenged all of this, gently but firmly. He asked, can we really know anything for certain, or do we just believe things because of habit, because of experience, because our minds are weird to expect the future to resemble the past? He questioned the very foundations of knowledge, and he did something even more daring. He applied the questioning to morality, to religion, to politics, with the self. He asked, what is the self really? Is there a permanent you hiding behind all your thoughts and feelings? Or is the self just a bundle of impressions, constantly changing, constantly flowing? These were still are unsettling questions. Hume didn't pretend to have all the answers, but he was brave enough to ask the questions honestly. So why should you, today in this minute, care about a book written nearly 3 centuries ago? Here's why. Because we still don't fully understand ourselves. We live in an age of information. We carry tiny computers in our pockets. We can access more knowledge than any generation before us. And yet, we still struggle with the same basic questions. Why do I believe what I believe? Why do I make the choice I make? Why do I sometimes act against my own better judgment? Hume's insights are not just historical curiosities. They are tools for understanding yourself. When you notice how your habits shape your thinking, you gain a little more freedom. When you see how your emotions influence your beliefs, you become a little more honest with yours. When you question the assumptions you have always taken for granted, you open the door to deeper understanding. The Treatise is not a self-help book. It's not going to give you a 5 easy steps to a better life, but it will teach you to pay attention, to look closely at your own experience, to wonder about things you have never wondered about before. And that, I think, this is one of the most valuable things any book can do. Now I know that people came to a book. Some of you are students working through this for a class, maybe feeling a little nervous about whether you will understand it all. Let me reassure you. You don't have to understand everything the first time. Hume himself rewrote and rethought these ideas throughout his life. Take it slowly, let the ideas settle. Some of you are teachers or scholars returning to these texts with fresh eyes, looking for new angles and deeper insights. I hope this introduction reminds you of what we made these ideas exciting in the first place, before they become familiar, before they become textbook material. And some of you are just curious. Maybe you have never read philosophy before. Maybe you picked up this up on a whim. Maybe you are just interested in how the mind works. To you, I want to say, you belong here. This book was written for anyone who wants to understand what it means to be human. Hume himself was not an academic living in an ivory tower. He was a living, breathing person, full of curiosity and doubt and wonder. He wrote this book as a young man. He, he was only in his mid 20s, trying to make sense of the world. In some ways, we are all doing the same thing. So, as you begin this journey, let me leave you with a few simple questions to carry with you. Why do you trust your own thoughts? Where do your beliefs really come from? What makes you who you are? You don't need to answer these questions right now. You don't need to answer them ever really, but hold them gently in your mind as you listen. Let them guide your attention. Let them open your curiosity. Philosophy at its best is not about memorizing answers. It's about learning to ask better questions. And David Hume was one of the best question askers who ever lived. And with that, we are ready to begin. In just a moment, we all turn to book one of the treatises which Hume title of the understanding. Here, Hume starts at the very beginning. He asks, what are the basic building blocks of thoughts? Where do our ideas come from? How do we move from simple sensations to complex beliefs? It's a careful, patient exploration, and like any good journey, it starts with small steps. So take a breath, settle in, and let yourself be curious. You don't have to figure everything out at once. Just listen, wonder, and see where Hume's question take you.